Hello and welcome to Films for the Very First Time. My name is Jordan, and with me, as always, is Casey McGeorge.
Oh, how's it going, everybody?
It's going good. The time of we're recording this, it is March Madness, so I'm enjoying that. We're going to be talking some sports today. Um,
I didn't even really pick up on that. Yeah, here we are.
yeah, no, it's good. I'm looking
Funny how
forward.
sometimes these things just kind of come together on their own.
Yeah, we had not, we had went ahead and picked this movie, this documentary 2 weeks ago because we didn't record last week. So yeah, just a little happy accident here um, on what we're discussing, and I think it, I think it helped me as well in the sense of Friday when I watched it. We'll talk about what we're watching in a second. Friday when we watched it, the Maryland game had just finished, and there wasn't like a good game on. Like none of them were super close. So I was like, this is the perfect time to watch this documentary now.
Okay, so before we do start, I'll say this: I haven't been able to get as much into March Madness for a couple reasons. One, the players only stay like a year, so I don't really know who they are anymore, and now they transfer all over the place. So that makes it a lot harder. I'm also a Syracuse fan. They haven't really been involved in March Madness for many years. Uh, Two, and I saw a clip of this the other day. I remember back in the day when I was a kid growing up, where it was basically just CBS. You get games all day long on CBS, but that was it. So you didn't really have a choice. Like, obviously, depending where you were, they would either try and tailor it to you where it was a
Yeah, kind of
local
like the
team that you
NFL,
were watching,
how they do that.
or like the national game where it was like if Duke or North Carolina or Kentucky or your
Yeah,
major games were playing. But now, especially now with gambling, but now you have what is it?
and True
TNT,
TV.
TBS, CBS. How the hell did True TV and like
They're
that?
owned
That
by
makes
the people
no
that
sense.
own TNT and TBS. So yeah,
I get that, but like out of all the places to put like college basketball, True TV that like eight people only watch.
yeah,
Other than that, like come on, but so like now you can actually just pick and choose and there's we always knew there was more games going on at one given
Mhm.
time, but the fact of like you know you would only get like that one game, and if it was a blowout they would just cut to another game, or you would hope they would just cut to another game instead of now you can just they'll probably leave it because now they know you can just click on
Yeah,
another
they'll
game and
usually
watch
be
that.
like, "Hey, this is a short clip of like this game. They've cut it within two. That's over on TBS. So turn over to TBS if you want to watch the full final minute or whatever."
And then which I kind of get, but like because they're so strict about the video rights. So like Scott Van Pelt isn't doing his normal Sports Center this week because, and he talked about it on his podcast. He said because they can only use like a total of like 2 minutes of
Really?
clips from the
That's it?
day. So yeah, yeah. So he's like we can't really talk about anything, or we can just talk about it. We can't really
It's
show
crazy.
anything, right? They get to use a total of 2 minutes of clips from all the action throughout the day, and especially like Thursday, Friday, yesterday, and today are the biggest days where they have the most games. He's like, why are we even going to go on? We can't we
And
can't do
nobody's
anything. We're
watching
just talking.
Sports Center at
It's the
that
same
point.
thing.
They would have the game on, right? Like I feel like it's a little different now.
But it's almost the same as with the Olympics. The Olympic rights, they're like NBC and the Olympic Committee are real strict about that. So that's why you just see a lot of still footage. You don't see a lot of actual action, except for like maybe a 5 second clip of like the Olympic rights, because it costs too much money to license it, or they only want to give them certain amounts, and they want to save their best stuff. And he acknowledged too. He's like, look, if ESPN had it, we'd be the same way about it. He's like,
Right.
I'm not knocking them for it because ESPN would do the same thing if they had the rights to these games and stuff. But he's like, yeah, well, we're not going to be on there. Like he said the same thing. Most people are going to be watching the actual games instead of
Yeah.
the Sports Center. But two, they can't show anything, so he's like, "Why?
You can
I'm not showing up
IT.
Thursdays. Like, figure something out."
They got that, and they got the women's tournament, so they can show those highlights. All right, Casey. Like we said, this is films for the very first time. We discuss movies and TV shows that each one of us has either seen or hasn't seen. Your pick this week was sports related. What are we talking about?
All right, so uh, I got the idea of this because I was listening to an interview on another podcast um, from Ezra Edelman, the guy who made the OJ Made in America documentary that won an Academy Award a few years back. And it got me thinking about some good sports documentaries. And we're going to ESPN to type into that. For their 30th anniversary, they took 30 different filmmakers to talk about 30 different stories that happened over their first 30 years. They didn't do the typical, like, oh, we're going to do one story a year, like the biggest story. Each of these filmmakers had a chance to talk about something that happened during that time that affected them or they loved or hated or whatever the case is. So the one I chose is called June 17th, 1994. It's directed by Brett Morgan and it was released on June 16th, 2010. So June 17th, 1994 details events that all occurred in one day. So these are the events that occurred on the day of June 17th, 1994. Arnold Palmer played his final round at the 94 US Open. The commencement of the 94 FIFA World Cup that was played in the United States, hosted by Oprah Winfrey and then President Bill Clinton. The New York Rangers celebrated their 94 Stanley Cup Finals victory with a ticker tape parade on Broadway. Game 5 of the 1994 NBA Finals between the Houston Rockets and the New York Knicks happened that night, with the Knicks taking a 3-2 lead in the NBA Finals. Ken Griffey Jr. tied Babe Ruth's record of the most home runs at 30 before June 30th in the team's 65th game of the 94 Major League Baseball season. He was on pace to have possibly broken Roger Maris's single season home run record. And the day it's mostly known for was the day Orenthal James Simpson, better known as O.J. Simpson, was officially in a warrant for his arrest for the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman was issued. And this is the day that we got the white Bronco O.J. Simpson chase. And so this movie is unique in the fact that, unlike most documentaries, there's no voiceover, there's no narration, there's no interviews, there's no talking heads. It's simply news clips that happened all throughout the day of all of these things. And we'll talk about how the movie lays out in a moment. And we talked a little bit last week, like, what do you remember as like what is your most memorable sports day? And I figured for you the two of them that I could think of would be the two that the Ravens won. Two that the Ravens won the Super Bowls. For me, two of them are two Tampa Bay Buccaneers Super Bowl wins, a couple of Boston Celtics NBA championships, and then this day as well. Just because I remember I was I just ended like my freshman or sophomore year in high school. So I remember like sitting in my room watching most of this crap throughout the day. And it was just amazing for me. Where were you in June of 1994?
Okay. So I was turning 3.
Okay, so you had no clue what was going on in the world.
In like 9 days, June 26th. Yeah. So I was 3. One thing I think is really interesting about all of this for me, actually, is hearing people in this documentary talk about, when they're interviewing people on the street, the fans, Talk about
Oh, we will get to that in a moment. Yeah,
what an icon OJ was, because my whole life of like what I know, right? He was known for this, right?
yeah.
I don't know, like, Casey, if you had to equate OJ to like a current NFL player, like
Okay,
what level, like who are we dealing with?
I wouldn't equate him to an NFL player. The one way I can kind of equate him, I'd say like imagine Dwayne Johnson. He OJ at one point was a megastar. Okay, he won the Heisman Trophy. He won the NFL MVP. He was like the first guy to break the 2,000-yard rushing uh, mark in the NFL in a season, right? And then he became a big spokesman. He did a lot of Hertz car rental commercials. So during the NFL season at this time, he was also a sideline reporter. So he did like Tracy Wolfson type stuff, where he was catch people in and out of halftime, talk about stuff on the sidelines. Um, he did a lot of Hertz car commercials, right? Where he's like running through the airport, obviously because he's a running back and he's hurdling things, he's spinning around people and he's doing all this stuff. And he was Nordberg in the Naked Gun movies, right? So he was in Hollywood. He was acting. We talked about this last year. He was they initially wanted and pitched him for the role, for Arnold Schwarzenegger's role as the T-800 in the Terminator movies. But, because of, at the time, his clean-cut good guy image, it was thought and believed that nobody could take O.J. Simpson as a murderer or as someone who would do something like that. He had a TV pilot, I think it was called Frogmen or something, where he was going to play like a special forces type guy and stuff like that. So he was, I think he was trying to get some other work in Hollywood lined up. He was a major, major star. I'll tell a quick story. So I had a subscription to Penthouse magazine in the late 90s and around 97. Number one, I had it for the obvious reasons. We don't need to go there. But just like Playboy, they actually did have some very well-written and
Good
really good
articles? All
articles
right.
in there. Yes. One of those articles dealt with some of the mistakes. This was, I think, 98, 99. I had it somewhere in that range. Talked about some of the mistakes that the prosecution made during the O.J. Simpson trial, including one major mistake. So, story goes, okay, after the murders happened and everything, O.J. Simpson gets a vehicle, gets a car, he's taken to the airport. He has a flight to Chicago. So he goes, he takes his flight to Chicago. Now, we'll talk once again, this is pre 9/11. So, like when you were dropping people off at the airport or you were picking people up at the airport, you could literally go to the gate. So, like stuff you might see in older movies of like people waiting at a gate as people deplane, as weird as it may seem for us now, like it that's how things used to be. There was a individual who was waiting at a gate in Chicago for someone else. And he distinctly remembers he's sitting there and he sees O.J. Simpson come off the plane. This was before news of the murder had broke, but it was just the fact that it was O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson was a major star. Like I said, imagine. Plus, he really was a large figure. I think he was like 6'1", 6'2". He was not a small guy. So imagine, like I said, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is obviously, I'm pretty sure it probably flies private. But imagine like if you go to the airport, you see him walking off the airplane, right? People were like, he was just shocked, like, oh wow, that's O.J. Simpson. OJ gets off the plane, right? He hurries over from the plane to a trash can, takes something in a bag that he had put in like a small leather bag or something, takes this bag, takes the lid off the trash can, puts it in the trash can, puts the lid back on, and scurries away. He After everything happens, he contacts Marsha Clark and Christopher Darden in the LA County prosecutor's office, but nothing was ever followed up on. What was in the bag? We don't know. Come to find out, also a few years ago, when they tore down the property at Brentwood, where the murders happened, uh, they tore everything because people were going by there. It was this whole nightmare for the people who live in the neighborhood. So they tore the entire property down to kind of redo it, put something else up there, so maybe it stopped people from coming around. While they were doing that, they found in the backyard a knife. Um, but it had been in the ground for so long. I don't know if they were ever able to get blood samples and various other things off it because the actual murder weapon has never been found. That might have been it, but once again, I probably could do a quick Google search. I don't know, but I never got around to it. So. But yeah, O.J. Simpson was a massive star in the 80s and 90s. He was like I talked about it. They made a documentary about O.J. Made in America, where he came up from some rough upbringings, I think in the Bay Area, and made something of himself and became a star athlete and won the Heisman and was did all these things. Yeah, for like this is a perfect encapsulation for a generation of people like you. This is all you really know O.J. Simpson as. Like, this is it. But then there's people like me who knew him as something different, and then there's a whole generation of people before me who knew him as the actual athlete. Like, I never saw him play because he had retired by the time by the time everything had kicked off. But they remember it for more. So yeah, it is wild as we see later where people are like, cheering him on and didn't believe in all this. But look at where that led to everything.
Okay, well, I guess the stage is set. So do we want to dive in?
So documentary starts off and it leads us up into some things that have happened in the previous days before June 17th, right? So we get the actual murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Gold. We get Mark Messier, who had guaranteed victory, leading the New York Rangers to the Stanley Cup championship. We get because at the time the NBA Finals had a 2-3-2 format. There were two. Whoever was the higher seed, whoever had the better record, had 2 games at home. Then they went for 3 straight games on the road, and then they went back home for 2 more games. So a couple of days before Game 4, the Knicks won to tie it up at 2-2. The day before, Arnold Palmer starts his what eventually was his final round at the U.S. Open. We also get Griffey hitting a couple home runs that leads to him at this point, right? Side note, this dude may have had the best swing I've ever seen in baseball history.
I know. I was watching the swing on I think when we get to like the middle of this documentary and it flashes to him hitting the home run and it's just that sweet swing and you just knew it was gone too. It's like
the sound, the crack off that bat and that swing. I think I rewound it like 5 times because I'm like, I don't know if we will. I think it helped that he was left-handed too.
Yes.
It just looks so
something
natural.
about a lefty swing. And I'll tell you too, like, Griffey was one of my boys growing up. I grew up in the 90s, so he was one of my favorite players growing up, especially that Mariners team. Like, I'm an Orioles fan, but I really loved watching like him and Ichiro as we get later on into the 90s and stuff. Like, they were so fun to watch, especially Griffey. Just amazing.
Yeah, at one point you had Griffey, Jay Buhner, pre-steroid Alex Rodriguez,
yes,
Randy Johnson, and how that team never managed to break through. Edgar Martinez.
I know.
Edgar Martinez was on that team, was on some of those teams. Yeah, he was. Like I said, I must have rewinded 4 or 5 times because I'm like, that swing and just the sound of that ball coming off the bat. As soon as that you heard that sound, you knew that ball was gone. Like there was no doubt. They had a game in Kansas City at Kauffman Stadium that day, and there was just absolutely zero doubt of like, oh, that's out the park, man. Um, so we have all of these things that lead us up to this morning, and we start off that morning where and I'm probably jumping around because I can't remember. I didn't take like time codes of whatever, but they do kind of start in a chronological order. Um, and I think one of the first things that happened was the Los Angeles Police Department issuing an arrest warrant for O.J. Simpson earlier that morning. Um, now, obviously, that's on the West Coast. A lot of you got the Griffey stuff happens in the middle of the day at Kauffman Stadium. It's in the middle of the country. The World Cup kicks off in Chicago, which is why you have Oprah Winfrey there. It'll be just like in was it 2026 when the World
Yeah,
Cup comes back here,
next summer we'll be
where it'll
seeing this
be.
type of thing again. Opening ceremony.
Another side note, I hate to say it, I wouldn't mind if FIFA just decided to pull it from us. I don't like this. I don't think we deserve it at this point, but that's a whole
I was
nother.
kind of I was kind of watching it and thinking like, oh, Clinton's making a really good speech here. I was like, oh, we're in some trouble next year.
Yeah, I have no. Um, but yeah, so that's in Chicago. Obviously, the stuff with the Knicks and the Rangers take place in New York. Also, remember when Rudy Giuliani was America's mayor?
Yeah, this was another poorly aged aspect of this.
And not only this, and this was well before 9/11. He was still
Yes.
his stop and frisk policies were obviously horrible, but he was still, because he kind of cleaned up the seediness of Times Square that were going on. Times Square used to have like a lot of porn booths and nudie shops and various other
Yeah.
things, and he kind of helped clean it up to get it to where it is now, with as much of a tourist attraction as it is, and make it more for tourists to come and visit. But yeah, at one point, Rudy Giuliani was considered like America's mayor. And there was serious talk, especially after 9/11, that, hey, he might be able to run for president.
Hmm.
That doesn't age well, yeah. And then Palmer's the 94 US Open is in Oakmont, which I was that in Kentucky, I think it's it.
I'm
So
not sure.
the stuff's happening all over the country. Um, obviously, golf kind of starts early anyway, so he tees off for his final round pretty early. Like I said, once again, the whole thing is happening in Los Angeles, where. So this is also before 24-hour news cycle really hits. Honestly, this kind of kicks a lot of that off. Like this Bronco chase and everything that happens with O.J. Simpson really is what kicks a lot of this stuff off. Where, like, we obviously had CNN and Fox News where they were 24-hour news networks, but it was nothing like anything we see now with the way stuff is. Also, hell of a mustache on that spokesperson from the LA
Yeah.
from the LAPD there. That's a mustache. So what are your thoughts on the initial everything that's going on initially in this?
Yeah, some of this stuff is new to me. Like I couldn't I know like the bare bones of the OJ stuff, right? Like I don't know how it all happened. I haven't watched any of those documentaries. So for this it's been so this kind of start was like, okay, I'm starting to understand a little bit more. Like I didn't really know that they had like that they were begging for him to come turn himself in or anything. Like I had no idea how the chase started or anything. I just know the
Do,
white Bronco. You know what I'm
do
saying? Like
you know who Kato Kalin is?
No.
Kato Kalin was a house guest. He was like, so out here in California, we have a lot of what's called ADUs, additional dwelling units. So think of like Fresh Prince of Bel Air, like the pool house that Carlton and Will lived in the back, or stuff like that. A lot of places, especially, have stuff like that they use for extra income, right? You can make like a little mini apartment and rent it out to people. And but I can't remember if Cato lived in the pool house or if he lived in the main house. But he was a roommate of Nicole Brown Simpson, who was living there. And he became an internet celebrity. Well, he became an accidental celebrity because he was kind of a witness to some stuff because he remembers kind of hearing when the murder happened. Actually, no, I think no, he lived with OJ, I think. He lived in one of the two places, and I think if I remember correctly, he lived with OJ, but OJ like couldn't get in the house or something, and there was all this weird things. He heard some bumps when OJ was trying to get back in the house. He turned into like this weird celebrity. Like this is kind of how some of the reality TV stuff. Like he became a minor celebrity, and he was a big part of the trial and stuff.
Well, isn't this how we get the Kardashians?
Robert Kardashian was a friend of Orenthal James Simpson, and yes, I think he was one of his attorneys. So yeah, this is
because of the spotlight on this case, and because of the Kardashian, like they became like a household name. That when I don't think we get Keeping Up with the Kardashians if the OJ case doesn't happen, right? Like
I don't think we do. I don't. Yeah, that's been brought out by other people before. Like this OJ Simpson case had such a huge impact. Add into the fact we're 2 or 3 years removed from the LA riots that dealt with the Rodney King beating. So let's go back a couple years. Rodney King is for years people had been complaining that the LAPD were not as great as they were, and there was a lot of police brutality going on. Nobody ever believed it. Like it's hard to fight up against when you say 6 cops beat you and then 6 cops are like, nah, we didn't do anything, right? So one individual happened to catch Rodney King getting beat on his camcorder, on his brand new camcorder that he got. And then he turned the footage over to like news stations and things. Cops get arrested. During the state trial, they were found not guilty, which then caused Los Angeles to explode, which then we had the LA riots in the early 90s because it was just a bunch of bullshit. Like, it's literally right there on film, and they were found not guilty. But there's a whole bunch of things that kind of went into that. That's a whole separate subject, and they had to move the trial from one location to another, which means when they move the trial to that location, you're pulling people for the jury pool from that location, which that location was in San Valley, which is a whole separate location from where the Rodney King beating actually happened, which means you're getting different demographics, and that's once again a whole other subject. If you look up Slow Burn, the Slow Burn podcast, there's a really good series on that talks about that. So part of one of the reasons why you see some people who were cheering for OJ and didn't believe that he could do something like this is, one, because of his celebrity, 2, because he was rich and famous, 3, we kind of had proof that the LAPD were setting people up. And I don't know if this is before or Crash Rampart had, where there was this whole scandal about certain police stations and some things they did. And then the last 5 to 10 years has been talks about gangs in the LAPD, how they kind of have their own gangs in different substations or in the sheriff's department. So, um, but yeah, this is a much different time. Like, uh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, you froze there. Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. You were saying like you didn't know how a lot of this started or what happened or
yeah,
anything. So
yeah, no. So like, just getting all of that information was brand new to me. Which is where like um the structure of it is very interesting because like you said, there's no voiceover or talking head that like as somebody not as familiar with this day, I'm putting pieces together. Like you're spending time sitting there like okay like uh you know for people that live this day probably comes a little easier in that type of span of like oh yeah the OJ yeah he was doing this beforehand and now this is what was going on. Like for me as somebody that wasn't as deep in that I'm like sitting there trying to figure it out as we go.
and this does a good job of piecing everything together slowly. Of like the slow, ultimately, it's this slow burn that leads up to the Bronco chase that night, right? But you have like the police spokesperson initially, and then it shows you different clips of like not just like major news outlets talking about O.J. Simpson is now wanted for the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, but you're looking at like Charlie Steiner on Sports Center, and you're looking at Sports Center anchors and Keith Olbermann and all these other like Sports Center anchors talking about it throughout the day on like ESPN 2 and Sports Center, at noon and 1 and all these other things. So like back then we didn't have all these like get up and debate shows, right? So like ESPN actually showed sports a lot, but they would also kind of for a while there, like ESPN would show the same Sports Center like continuously up until a certain time.
Yeah,
Then they
same
would
thing when I was growing up. Yeah.
then they would add they would show stuff as new footage or new things were happening throughout the day, and then maybe you'd have like some weird at times. I think there was some workout stuff. I remember there was one lovely lady named I believe Kiana, had a crush on as a kid. She did a workout thing. I think maybe he was on ESPN 2. I don't know, but like you didn't have Get Up and you didn't have whatever Stephen A. Smith show, and you didn't have Around the Horn and all these other shows. They had to fill their content other ways, so they had like some of these weird things, and then they could just easily cut that off and go straight into like, hey, breaking news from Sports Center, because a lot of that stuff is pre-recorded anyway. Um, and you see, like they're having difficulty trying to figure out how to talk about this, right? Um, and we see that especially later on with Bob Costas during the NBA Finals, where he's like, I've tried, like, he's talking to his producer at one point. He's like, look, we just have to go straight to it. Like, there's no way to transition to this in a decent way. Like, we can't do it. We just have to cut straight into it and be like, hey, we're doing the best we can with this, but we do have a basketball game to play, right? Um, and as you see these people talking to producers and things was amazing as they're like, okay, so how are we going to work this? What are we going to do? Early that morning, so probably I think maybe around 11, 12. That's when the Rangers start their Stanley Cup parade. And I've never, have you ever been to a championship parade?
Yes, I have. 2013's Ravens Super Bowl champ
Did
parade.
they cancel school for you guys that day? Because I know now that's
Well,
a thing they do.
I was in college, so I did not. I did call out of work. I did call out of work.
I don't think you were the only one to do that. So.
Told them I was sick. They had suspicions I was lying. But whatever. I didn't post any photos of it until after I left that job. I was like, I'm not going down for this. Um, but yeah, no, it was a good time. I may have gone to the 2001. I don't remember. I was a kid, so I'd have to ask my. I think my parents would say yes, we went to that, but so I may have gone to two, but those would only two I would have had the chance to go to because we only have two teams here in the area. So
And let's be realistic. Like, well, there's only two in Baltimore, but like Washington's not winning a championship anytime soon.
the
And, well, you
Nats
could have went to the
did. So
Nationals parade. You say
yeah,
you could have
I
went to the
could have
Nats parade.
went to that, but no, I did not. And I'm close to Philly too, so I could have gone to any of theirs that they've had recently too, but I have not.
But so yeah, like especially New York City, they're blocking everything off. They got a victory parade, right? And it at the time it had been 54 years since the Rangers had won the Stanley Cup. And one of the things it shows earlier is them going to like game sevens or them losing, the Stanley Cup final to other teams, right? And not winning. So you get some of these people who, yeah, like one guy's like, I waited 54 years for this. And it was funny, a little kid later was like, now I can die in peace. But, like some of these people, yeah, waited their whole lives. Like I remember I listened to it online when the Cubs finally won the World Series a few years back. And thinking about like how many people, I mean, you had stories of like, and the same thing when the Red Sox won their World Series in '04. You had people who were going to like cemeteries and listening to World Series games with like dead relatives who died before they could experience that, right? But they wanted, like, when clinching games came up, they wanted to share this moment with their grandfather who introduced them to Cubs or Red Sox baseball, right? And who wanted to have that moment with them. So, and I don't know. I kind of wish I could have been in Tampa for their last Super Bowl one. That would have been awesome, especially to see a drunk Tom Brady throwing the trophy from boat to boat would have been phenomenal. But are you a hockey fan at all, or?
I mean, I dabbled into it. I'm not like a hardcore fan. I'm currently watching. I'm a Capitals fan, so I'm currently watching and waiting for Ovechkin to break the
Like,
Gretzky record. So that's something I'm looking forward to. He's like 7 goals away of this recording. And I went to my first hockey game last year, actually, my first NHL game, and it was a Caps Flyers game. I went up to the Philly because it was easier for me to get to the Philly campus than it is for me to get down to DC. But I do want to. I do want to go. I've been watching some late night hockey too with the baby. At times, I'm up late and I'm like wanting to put sports on. And it's like the only sport on it. Some days I'm like, well, it
yeah,
looks
because
like we're watching the
you'll get
Seattle
all
Kraken.
Honestly, that's my team. I'm a Kraken fan. One, because they were a new team,
Yeah,
and they didn't have a fandom. So,
yeah,
like, I
it's
didn't want
easy
to
to
jump
jump
on.
on when it's new. Yeah,
I didn't want to jump on a fandom when they were, the front running fandom, right? Because that's just not cool. But I was
yeah.
like, okay, I can get with Seattle and cool colors and the Kraken. Like I can be down with the Kraken. So, um, so like I said, we have a slow burn with the OJ thing as this stuff is building, and then it comes to, okay, he's gonna turn himself in, and then he hasn't turned himself in yet, and you've got a bunch of reporters that are at like the courthouse where he's supposed to turn himself in. You've got a bunch at his home where the murders happened or whatever, right? And so now, like, and then this is where we get a lot of the helicopter footage as well of like especially out here, and the media with the helicopters are like starting to go around and trying to find it. This is where we get the infamous white Bronco. Uh, would you happen to know where the Bronco is today?
Some museum? I don't know. Like, where would that be?
It is next to Ted Bundy's Volkswagen Bug and John Dillinger's red Essex Terraplane in Alcatraz East Crime Museum in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee.
That's really gotta suck because it wasn't his Bronco, right? It was his friend's Bronco.
I think so. I think it was Al Cowling's Bronco,
Yeah,
but
because at first, early on in the thing, and this is what I was thinking about too, because I know the Bronco. Early on in the documentary, they're like talking about we don't know where OJ is, but like he's got 2 cars, right? One of them is a white something else, they said, and then the other
yeah.
one's like a gray or black car. So I was like, none of those were a Bronco. I'm like, where is he getting the Bronco? So I think it is his friends. I think they mentioned it in here too. So like, just imagine your car is locked, your car is gone.
Well, so
Part of the evidence.
there was a really interesting story because until the museum got it, for a long time it was like just in a random garage out here in the Los Angeles area, and it had like tarps over it and it was covered up. But people always wanted to see it and buy it, and then finally they decided, whoever owned it now decided to sell it, and it made its way to this crime museum. I think Bonnie and Clyde's car that they were shot in is in a museum in Las Vegas. I think it's in a crime museum in Las Vegas.
Interesting.
But yeah, like honestly, I kind of want to go to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, because with Bundy's Volkswagen Bug and everything there.
I've been there. I haven't been to that museum, but I've been to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee.
How do you end up with a name like Pigeon Forge? What is going on in that town?
A lot of pigeons and a forge. I don't know.
So another interesting note: Domino's Pizza stated its delivery sales during the car chase were as large as Super Bowl Sunday.
Wow.
Like and I think they talked about it or showed it in the documentary or something I saw online. It's estimated up to 95 million people watch some or most of this white Bronco chase. Like this truly captivated the country in ways that people nowadays can't imagine. Especially now out here, like it's not much to see like a car chase on the news all the time. Like that's just the thing. And sometimes you watch it just because people do stupid stuff, and then sometimes it's just not worth watching because you might be in the middle of trying to watch something and then they pop in with the shake and you're like, God damn it! Now I gotta find something else to watch. But yeah, like almost 100 million people watch some or part of this Bronco chase with OJ, and apparently he supposedly had a gun to his head and was threatening to kill himself. And like you said, people eventually were crowding on highways and they're cheering him on and they're making signs. And it was a catastrophe beyond proportions. Like imagine you're some dude. Traffic out here is bad enough as it is. Like at any given point in time when you're getting on the 5 freeway or the 101 or the 405. Now imagine OJ Simpson comes along and is messing all this up. And it's just, and then, so one thing you see, if you look real closely in one of these things, you see there's the Bronco and then there's a bunch of police cars behind him, right? And then you see like a bunch of traffic, right? And then you see one police car doing like this, as you see my hand moving like this kind of weaving pattern all over the road, right? I had never seen that before until I was out here when I first moved out here one day, driving down the freeway, and I saw a police car doing that, and I thought maybe like someone stole a police car and like they were just joyriding. Apparently, they do it to ease up traffic because there's an accident or something later on in the road. They're still trying to get cleared up, so they're trying to keep the traffic from being this massive traffic jam up there. There's a name for the maneuver. I forget what it's called, but and I saw that and I was like, God damn it! Like when I saw that in this thing, I'm like, they've been doing that for years, and it sucks when you're behind it because they're going like 20 miles an hour as they're doing this on the freeway, and all you see in front of them is just empty lanes of freeway, and you're like, God damn it! This is gonna cost me 30 minutes.
Imagine you're OJ during this. Like you're having this chase, you're holding a gun to your head, you're on the run from the cops, and you just see all these dumbasses parking their asses on the freeway bridges to wave at you. Like, what's going through your mind at that
Two,
point? You know,
two other people. Imagine you're the people who lived in this Brentwood area who now have, as you saw, like
the media
hundreds of
camped out
press,
there.
not only press, but then fans started going up into that area and everything else. And who you now they're trying to camp out on your property. One of the funny things we heard when someone broke into one of the newscasts, they're like, "You have new developments?" He's like, "Yeah, I got a cell phone. I rented it off a guy out here." So like some guy, like one of these people, because his phone died, ended up renting someone else's cell phone off him for a period of time just to be able to like call back in, just so he could be able to get some sort of news back to his news desk, right? And imagine your OJ's kids. Now he has separate sets of kids, one from a previous relationship, and then there were kids from his relationship with Nicole Brown Simpson. Imagine you're his kid. It's bad. It's horrible enough you have to deal with the trauma of somebody brutally murdering your mother. Like I cannot even begin to fathom that. Now you have to deal with the trauma of, oh crap, my dad might have been the one to kill. Like now there's an arrest warrant for my dad. They think my dad killed my mom. Holy shit. My dad is on the run from the cops and he has a gun to his head and he just gave them a suicide or what they believe to be a suicide note. What did you think when it got to that point where Robert Kardashian read the letter from OJ, which they thought might have been a suicide note?
Yeah, that's the type of stuff I had no clue about. You know, I just knew like the way I probably thought the chase happened initially is like we're looking for him. Oh crap, there he is, and we're like chasing him. Like I had no clue it was like a this build to it throughout the day, and that he had left a note, and the Robert Kardashian side of things. Like that's all like stuff I had no clue about. I knew like Robert Kardashian was part of this somehow because I knew what David Schwimmer plays him. I think in the
Yeah, in the People
TV
versus OJ.
adaptation, yeah, which I have not seen, but I heard good things about Swimmer's portrayal there. So, um, just really, really new information for me, which sounds funny. I bet to a lot of people that have went through it.
Uh, did you happen to catch? So, at some point, baseball game starts, right, in Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City. Did you happen to catch the horrible joke from the broadcasters?
Yes, this is something I did not like at all. Was this like behind the scenes or was this on air? Because some of the stuff, like when Bob Costas is talking to his producer and stuff, but like, yeah, what they say, talking about OJ like golfing, right? He's already 2 under or whatever.
Yeah. Did you hear Simpsons at the U.S. Open? He already has 200. I
Yeah.
think that was off air. I don't think that was an on air comment. Because he also continued talking about OJ and everything else there. I think that was off air. That was kind of as they were gearing up for the game when they probably had cut to some package or someone back in the studio were doing it. He was talking with his buddy off air. Did you catch the other horrible OJ joke at the end of it?
Which one was it? Because
So
the
it's
one that stood
after.
out to me most was the 2 under one. But
So at the end of the Knicks Rockets game, Pat Riley is at his press conference, right? And he's
oh
up at the
yes,
table.
I
Uh,
hated this too. I hated this.
Somebody there says, "quote If OJ Simpson doesn't cut to the left, do you think he makes it?" And the look on Pat Riley's face, like Pat Riley doesn't looks like he doesn't play around much as it is, right?
Yeah.
He seems like a fairly serious guy. Um, and
Probably
then,
also puzzling because he was coaching during this whole race. Like, he
yeah,
probably has no actual clue.
that's another thing I was going to bring up. You wonder how much they might have known. Like, did they know that this was going on? And then you hear someone else off to the side, get him out of here. But
This is the type of these are the type of stupid ass questions you get like during Super Bowl media week as well. Like
yeah,
what the one where they were just asking Travis Kelce about they asked they asked him something about T Swift, I think. But then also at one point they asked Pat Mahomes like what ref is your favorite or that gives you the benefit. You know, like, it was all that type of stuff. It's like, let's cool it, guys. Like these dumb
so
questions are not actually ever going to get good responses.
so this is one of those. So and we're coming up on the 5 year anniversary of when COVID kind of struck the country down, right? And
Yeah.
uh, ESPN did a great thing where they talked about it of how Rudy Gobert was kind of patient. He wasn't necessarily patient, but he was the first one to test positive for COVID during that whole thing.
Yeah.
And this was also a couple of days after he kind of joked around and just went touching the microphones because he didn't think it was a big deal, blah, blah, blah. And then he's the one who comes down with COVID, right? And then he kind of gave Donovan Mitchell COVID, and that kind of soured their whole relationship. And up to the Utah Jazz split. But talked about leading up because they were playing the Oklahoma City Thunder that night. And as Gobert starting to not feel well, right? They're coming to realization like, oh crap, he might have COVID. And remember, this is like during the initial days where like they didn't know what was going on with it. It was really bad, blah blah blah. So now they're trying to separate people. They kind of delayed the game for a little bit, but there were other NBA games going on at the same time. And there's footage of like Mark Cuban finding out because he still owned the Dallas Mavericks at the time, of like someone like letting Mark Cuban know, hey, they just canceled the game in Oklahoma City because Rudy Gobert, or they didn't say it was Rudy because I don't think it was publicly out, but like someone tested positive and he's like, are you kidding me? And I think they had just been around the Jazz or something not too long before, so that was a whole thing, and then that led to the basically the postponing of the NBA season. But sometimes you get some of those weird things because yeah, like you brought up, Pat Riley's coaching the game. He might have heard something about OJ Simpson before the game started, like, hey, OJ's on the run. They don't know where he's at. Cool. He's got to coach a game 5 of the NBA Finals. So he might not have known. The Bronco Jace might not have even started by the time
I
he's
don't
out
think
there
it
on the
had.
court.
And I think also we're talking about a time before cell phones. There is a way to shut yourself off better back then where like
Yeah,
if you're coaching the team, you could be like, look, no radios, no TV in the locker room. We're going to
yeah.
focus on this task ahead of us here. Like nowadays, of
Think,
course, you'd get like push alerts that say like OJ on the run.
I got one the other day from out of nowhere after George Foreman passed away, right, from
Yeah,
ESPN.
yeah.
But like, imagine you're at the game as well, because I imagine it's New York City, so you could, I guess, but you're probably not showing up right at tip off. You probably, between the fact that there was also already the parade earlier, like if you're going to the game, if you're getting the subway to the game, you probably got to get there early, and some stuff might be blocked off in Madison Square Garden, blah blah blah. So let's say it's an 8 o'clock tip off. You're probably trying to get there around 7 o'clock. So you got to plan accordingly if you're going to take the cab or you're going to take the subway or whatever. So like you said, only kind of the wealthy had cell phones. Like not everybody had a cell phone at that time. So like once you leave your house or your apartment, unless you happen to see something on a TV as you're passing by or hear it on the radio, you have no clue what's going on. So there are people who left, went about their day, went to that game, came back, and then found out, wait a minute, what do you mean they chased OJ in a Bronco and he was threatening to kill himself? And he's now under arrest for the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson. Like,
Yeah. Just a time back then that was easier to everything was more in the public conscience, I feel like, because there was limited TV. and radio choices. Like people didn't have these apps they could sink their time into. But on the flip of that, we didn't have our phones everywhere. So there were times where you could get away with not being in the know. You come home and, or something just happens, like maybe uh, somebody knows in the stadium and it kind of circles around the stadium for them to find
You
out.
might
But
not you might not find out about something until you pick up a newspaper or watch the
yeah,
news the next morning.
yeah.
So let's talk about the aftermath of these events. So the U.S. Open concluded on Monday, June 20th, with Ernie Els winning a three-way playoff. The World Cup concluded on July 17th with Brazil winning its fourth championship after Roberto Baggio misses a must-make penalty during a shootout to decide the title. So before I move on, let me ask you this: how do you? And I know you are a football fan, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel about shootouts in general? How do you feel about a shootout deciding a title, especially for like a World Cup?
I'm fine with it. I mean, I feel like there's not many other ways you can go about it. I think, like, if you keep playing, people are going to get injured or they're going to be gassed. It's just not going to be a good. I think penalty shootouts actually have a very high stakes drama that people can. It's very simple to understand as well. Just like, hey, best out of 5 here, and can you kind of have some downtime between each shot that you're able to like really ratchet up the stakes to the audience, I think. So I've been to penalty shootouts in person. I find them very, very fun. I love when we go to penalties.
So I remember watching that with my buddy Sean, um, and I remember watching Brandy Chastain's from the Women's World Cup a few years later. I don't mind shootouts as much. So let me ask you this: you would probably know this because I don't. Let's say it's tied at the end of the shootout. Do they pick 5 other players, or do they keep the same 5 and go for another shootout?
So the way it goes is you send your first 5 up there, but you give the ref like a whole list, typically, of the order. If it's tied or still not decided after the 5, right?
Yeah.
You go to sudden death and you just keep sending people up there. When you get through all 11 players, you go back around to the first players again and keep going until sudden death is out. It doesn't happen a lot, but you will get times where you come down to the last 11th player and it's a goalkeeper. And you get to see how the goalkeepers take penalties and if they're able to block the other goalkeeper and stuff.
Are
And
you
it's
serious?
very fun.
So
Yeah.
there could be a chance it could be goalie on goalie crime here, goalkeeper on goalkeeper crime.
Yes, I can actually show you some clips. There's some really great shootouts that happened in the last couple of years where it's been goalie versus goalie at the end.
Okay. Wow. That's it. That I did not know. I think all shootouts should be there. What? Don't put Roberto. Don't put Ronaldo and put the goalies up there. Let them
take first. And some people, if the goalie's really good, they'll actually go before the 11th spot, and that's happened a few times too, where like one team sends up their goalie at like the 9th or 10th penalty taker and makes it. And yeah, it's good.
So let's talk about the '94 World Cup for a second. It was also featuring another 30 for 30 called Two Escobars. Pablo Escobar and the Colombian's men's national team player, Andres Escobar, who scored an own goal for the United States on June 22nd. July 1st, Andres Escobar was murdered in Colombia, reputedly by cartel-connected hitmen, enraged that his error led to the team being eliminated from the World Cup tournament. Apparently, it happened in public, like at a shopping plaza of some sort, and lots of people were there, but nobody saw a thing.
Of course.
The Rangers would not make another Stanley Cup final until they lost to the Kings in 2014. 4-1, and haven't won. They still haven't won the cup since '94. The NBA Finals concluded on June 22nd, with Houston winning the final 2 games, to win 4 games to 3. The Knicks returned to the finals in the strike-short '99 season, but lost that series 4-1. Have not been back since. '94 Major League Baseball season would end after the games of August 11th due to the players' strike. Griffey Jr. had 40 home runs at the time. MLB didn't return until the '95 season, and they had to cut 18 games off of that schedule. And we did lose the World Series in '94. O.J. Made in America won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature 23 years after the chase. Was produced by ESPN and Ezra Edelman. April 11th of last year, Simpson died of cancer at the age of 76. Let's see. During coverage of Game 5 of the finals, the game was shown in a small box on the corner while Tom Brokaw covered the car chase. When it was aired on KNBC in Los Angeles, they left the game coverage completely and didn't put up a split screen until the end of the game. We see Arnold Palmer and O.J. Simpson did a commercial together for Hertz in the 70s or early 80s. So let's see. Let's talk about Director Morgan says the diversity of the brands provides an opportunity to look at the soul of America. This documentary was very well received. The Los Angeles Times gave it high sports with the way of the world. Argues that its comments on how the media struggles to make sense of the events that have no clear outcome. Give me 1 second. I got to grab something for a second. At the time all this happened, I was 78, 88, 15, 16, somewhere in that range. Young man, like I said, the LA riots just happened. I was one of those people who didn't think OJ did it. I was under the belief that he was probably set up. And I was like, nah, he's rich. He's not going to go kill his wife.
As the one guy said, he has a lot to lose, too much to lose. Right?
Yes.
That's what one of the fans says.
I thought the same thing at the time. As I've gotten older, my opinions have changed. What did change my opinion mainly was when OJ decided to write a book called If I Did It, Confessions of the Killer. I bought the book. I don't know if you can see it. I still have the book. Doesn't show up too well with my blur vision on, but I have it. There is one particular chapter in here that talks about it. Chapter 6, The Night in Question. Once I read that chapter, I said, oh, he did that shit. I said there was no that immediately changed my mind of no, he did that shit. He killed those people. He slaughtered them, and it was horrible. Have you ever seen any of the crime scene photos?
No, I mean maybe some, but not like not enough to really recall.
They're out there. You can find them. I've seen them. If you're not the kind who enjoys blood and squeamish stuff, I would suggest not looking him up because he literally almost decapitates, or yeah, I'll say he almost literally decapitates Nicole Brown Simpson. It was bad. It was horrible. Also, when he died last year, um, apparently it was a Twitter hoax that he had done a deathbed confession. Although that's not as uncommon as people think. People really do deathbed confessions about horrible stuff they've done. But apparently, his last days, he did make the medical teams and people who were working at his facility, working with him, and his family sign non-disclosure agreements and leave cell phones out. Part of that is probably because he didn't want photos of him in his last days to come out on the internet. But that's also where the rumor of he might have confessed um, come from is the non-disclosure agreement. Being honest, when it comes to you think you're gonna die, people will have some thoughts and do some things they when you come face to face with your own mortality, um, you know it'll make you think about some things. So look at some ratings. Uh, on IMDb, 7.7 out of 10. Um, and unfortunately, there is no rating for the individual thing on Rotten Tomatoes. But overall, like I said, the whole 30 for 30 series is usually pretty well regarded, and this one, especially at the time, was definitely one of the more interesting things. Any other thoughts on before we get to your for our reviews and everything? Any other thought? Excuse me, or anything you'd like to bring up or talk about? Uh,
Um, no, I don't think so. I think everything else is kind of tied into to the review rating.
I mean, because yeah, honestly, there's not really much to say. Like, he's in the back of a Bronco. He's driving on the highway. Like, we can't. This isn't like most of the other stuff where you can kind of go through the movie and talk
Yeah,
about what happens in
yeah,
each scene. It's just one of
yeah.
those, like, hey, these are the events that happened that day. Um, unless we want to talk about Ken Griffey Jr.'s Sweet Swing anymore, like that's really about it.
Beautiful
Um,
swing.
so for me, this is probably one of my favorite ones from 30 for 30. I love the series. I actually bought it twice. I bought it on DVD and then I bought it when it came out with a Blu-ray set. I think they were a lot of those were really well made. They told some interesting stories. Some of them gave me thoughts and perspectives on some of these things that I did not know or hadn't thought of before. The U with Miami, Pony Express, Marion Jones with her Olympic issues with performance enhancing drugs. 4 Days in October, I want to see. Um, but overall, I love the series. It's something I probably need to watch more of. So I give it a 5 star for me. But not only that, but this is such a time capsule. It brings me when I was watching this, it literally brought me back to me being like 15 or 16 and sitting in my bedroom watching TV, like watching this during that hot June summer day. Um,
Where were you at this? Like where? I know you've lived all over, but where were
I was
you?
I was in Massachusetts. I was a teenager in
Okay.
Massachusetts where I grew up. So school had just gotten out. Um, I may have been over a friend's. I may have been with friends for most of the day, uh, going out doing things teenagers do throughout the course of the day. But I do remember watching, coming back home, having dinner, hearing about the whole OJ thing, and then watching the Knicks game, the Knicks Rockets game, and then it kept
Mm.
cutting in and out and everything. And I remember all that. Also, can we talk about how good Bob Costas used to be? I'm not saying he's bad now, but like
Yeah.
Bob Costas and like Tom Brokaw, like back then, oh man, like uh, uh, last year they did a Costas used to be the voice of so many things. He did a they replayed one of the games, college football game that between Notre Dame and Miami. Um, and it's the whole pregame thing, the little pregame packages they do. They talked about one fall Saturday or whatever, and it's a game at Notre Dame Stadium, or maybe I think it was Florida State and Notre Dame, where it was like number one versus number two in the country, and he's narrating this thing, and it was so good. And even former players were like, who was it? Mike Golick Jr. Like he watched it for the first time on Twitter, and he's like, "This is how they used to start games. Like, what happened? Why are we not doing this anymore?" But Bob Costas was great. I love that guy. I know he caught some flack during the baseball playoffs last year, but I don't know what that was all about. But I'll ride for Bob Costas. What say you, Jordan?
So I ended up giving this 4 stars here. I didn't know going into it would be as much on the OJ stuff. Like I thought it would show a little bit more of the rest of the sports stuff. Like I get that was the big story of the day, so that's on me, I think. But I would have liked to see some more clips of some of those other things going on. Because even when they start showing the NBA finals a lot, it's a lot of them being like, "Hey, we're showing this, but maybe we shouldn't be."
Okay.
Which I think is actually mind-blowing. I understand like some things are bigger than sports, but it's a man hunt. Like we can watch the sport game and not be, bad people,
You have a very valid point, but let me ask you this. What could they really show? So like Griffey only hit 1 home run that day. They showed that, right? The parade is just people cheering on Mark Messier and the New York Rangers. Not much to show there, right? They showed honestly some good things, and once again, Giuliani talking, but not really much to show there, right? Palmer didn't make the cut at the U.S. Open. He shot 16 over, and they showed honestly, like they showed a bunch of his shots, and not many of them were good. Those might have been his best shots of the day, or it could have just been to show how he was struggling. So they didn't really they showed those, but those it's not like he's hitting a bunch of birdies there, right? They did show some stuff during those World Cup games, but as you know, World Cup game can end 1-0. It can end in a shoot, because I think during the group stage they don't have a shootout, is it? It's just they can end.
Yeah, they can draw. Yeah, because you get a point. You get a point for draw.
So I don't know the final scores of those games. I think they showed just like some goalkeeper stopping some shots, or maybe one. There might have been one goal, but there wasn't much. So we'd have to look up to see what the scores of those games were. But realistically, like if it's not a high scoring game, if it's a 0-0 draw or 1-1 draw, there's not much to show there. And what was the score? Like 91-84, something like that.
Well, Germany won 1-0 over Bolivia, and then Spain and South Korea drew 2-2. So they could have shown some more stuff.
Okay, man, I'll give you that. They could have shown maybe a couple of those goals, and then, like I said, the finals game was like 91-84. And look, I love my 90s basketball. I will. I am one of the people who say basketball was better back then than it is now, because all they do is shoot threes now. Not a fan of it.
Maybe not better, but it was more entertaining, right? Like the issue with them shooting threes now all the time is it like it's not as fun to watch a three. Like it is during a big moment, but like if that's all they're doing, it's like there's no way to defend that at times. Like you can just pull, Steph Curry can just pull up a shot and like it's gone.
I'm of the opinion it was better. Yes, it was more physical, and there were slogs. And there were finals games that ended like 87-71, or low. You had finals games, low scoring like that. So I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm not saying it was all exciting. I will also admit there's a nostalgia tint to it because I was a teenager and that's when I was growing up. So, but I'm one of these old people who thinks the basketball was better during that time. And in all fairness, they probably showed most of the highlights of a Mason dunk, a Ewing dunk, couple of blocks, Olajuwon with the dream shake. Like, honestly, outside of that, I don't think that game might have had many actual highlights to see. So, like, these are all big events. But as far as, like, what else they could have shown in this, I think they did a good job of picking just some of the better things to show because there wasn't much else to see.
Yeah. Uh, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I think they could have shown maybe a little bit more stuff. It like the first part of it really starts building to it, and then of course it becomes the OJ show at the end of the at, from like the middle to the end of this, which I understand it was a big story, but um,
Also, when they finally did arrest him, he got out of his car, went in. They allowed him to call his mom, use the bathroom, and have a glass of orange juice.
you
If
know,
he
it's
was
funny.
not if he was not rich, none of that shit would have happened.
No, would have been put in the ground. But the you were saying like how you just loved seeing like the vibe of the 90s and stuff. During this, I literally looked at my wife and I said the 90s were awesome. Okay, they were great. And then later that night, I didn't even realize it until the next day. But later Friday night, I'm going to take a shower. I put on my 90s playlist, and then I'm like, oh, that was probably because I was just watching that. And yesterday my wife is like, man, I'm actually kind of craving some orange juice. I was like, is it because of the documentary?
I mean, it's so many weird things came out of that trial. Judge Lance Ito became like a sensation.
The glove doesn't fit. You must have quit, right?
Okay. Do you know the story behind that?
The saying or the
story of why
fact
the glove
he had like another glove on, right? They had to have him put a glove on to put the glove on.
It, the glove they had him put on was a
surgical, right?
Yeah, so like that's not gonna add much. Maybe a little bit, not gonna add much. So one of the things they did was
Doesn't his hand swell or something?
They stopped him from taking his blood pressure medication for a few days, which caused his hands to swell up. Like,
interesting.
And consequently, like his hand swole, it would not fit. Look, I was my senior year of high school, I believe, was when the trial was going on, and there was a couple classes where the trial would be on in the background as it, like my English class, one of the other classes I had, trial was going on. Because of that, one of the classes I had, we actually ended up having a mock trial. They set up something for it as well. We ended up having a mock trial in class, kind of how the justice system worked for us to see it ourselves. But
every time you say mock trial, it just makes me think of Arrested Development with the mock trial with Judge Reinhold.
Yeah.
William Hung singing, it's a hung jury.
I don't know what I expected. But like, so one, all these shock jock stations and everything, right? Like you probably, well, I don't know if they have them anymore on the radio, but they used to have them, right? We had one in my hometown in Worcester, Massachusetts called WAAF. They sent, because Judge Ito always had a coffee mug with him. They sent Judge Ito a coffee mug, and he actually used it one day at the trial. It was a big thing because he had a mug with WAAF on it, and they were like, "Oh, you got the mug." It turned into this whole thing. Look, you gotta wonder if he's found guilty, how much does that change some things after that? Because that caused a ripple effect as well.
Would we have a book called If I Didn't Do It?
Well, I mean, and then when he did go to jail, he actually went to jail like on the anniversary of like him being found not guilty of these crimes. So I don't know.
And you said that you changed your mind with the book, or was it before that during like the trial
book.
and stuff? Okay.
No, honestly, throughout the trial, because look, Detective Mark Furman was a racist, like, and that was proven during the trial, right? Look, I'm not saying there was enough DNA evidence there that it probably was him. There's like a Italian shoe footprints that like 3 people in the entire country had. One of them being O.J. Simpson, right? Like, I mean, these are like custom-made Italian shoes where it was just a ridiculously small number of people had these shoes, and OJ happened to have these shoes, and like I said, like there's a footprint of these shoes there, bloody footprints. Okay, the glove, all that other stuff, and glove. Then as you read more into it, there's a whole lot of things they did horribly as far as like crime scene investigation that messed the
Yeah.
investigation up, whatever, blah blah blah. But once again, being young, being dumb, coming a year or two off of the LA riots, I was firmly in the belief like, nah, I didn't think OJ Simpson would kill his wife. Like, I just didn't think that was possible.
There's a lot
Like I
of people
said,
like that, right? Like if you look at the I know a lot of African Americans, like a stat wise, not like I know people that were watching this during the time, but like,
oh yeah, it was sharply divided by racial lines
yeah,
of
that we're
whether or not he did it.
celebrating the verdict, right? Because
Yeah,
of the Rodney King riots. That type of stuff leads into that, right? Like,
and even polls they were doing on do you think OJ did it or do you think he's guilty were sharply divided along racial lines. Like I said, the book came out. I was at Fort Stewart, Georgia. I ordered the book and I was like, I gotta read this. And then when I read it and I
okay,
got to that chapter,
so
that's when I was like, oh,
before you got to that chapter, and he comes out with the title, does that start changing it a bit, or you're like, okay, let me read it? Like,
it didn't change my mind. Honestly, I thought it was more because so he was found not guilty at the criminal trial, but he was found liable at the civil trial, which means they filed a wrong. The Goldman family. I don't know if the Brown family was involved there or not, but I know Ron Goldman's dad filed a wrongful death lawsuit against OJ, and OJ owed the family a ton of money for the wrongful death of their son. Because for a civil trial, it's not necessarily beyond a reasonable doubt. It's just by like a preponderance of the evidence or whatever. So he owed the family a ton of money, like millions of dollars. And I don't think they ever collected on it. So much so that a lot of stuff was happening where stuff was being put into like his kids' names and there was weird shit going on as far as that. Because that was the only way like you were going to keep his assets. Like he had to sell his Heisman Trophy. He had to get rid of his Heisman Trophy, which at the time I thought was bull. And then now I'm realizing like, nah, yeah, that probably do that. So honestly, I thought it was just a money grab because
okay.
He actually even came out with a TV show after this called like Juiced or something, where he was pulling pranks on people.
I think I remember that actually.
He did. I don't think it lasted long. I don't even know if it made it past the pilot stage, but he did like a punk type show. And so I thought it was just a money grab. Like he need the money, so hey, let me write a book of like if I did it, this is what would have happened. Ha ha ha. And then I read it and I was like, oh no, you are fucking guilty. You did that shit. You. God damn you. I was pulling for you until I read that book. Now, not so much.
2006 is when Juiced was. It was a 1 hour special, you're right, that featured him engaging in a series of pranks. At the end of each one, he'd come out and tell the victim, you just got juiced. Most of the pranks fell flat on their face, is what this Reddit poster put, by saying people sometimes didn't recognize OJ or didn't understand the prank, or the whole idea was just too damn stupid. The icing on the cake was the one where OJ attempted to sell a replica of the white Ford at a real bullet hole, which Juice signed right above it. Oh boy.
And then he did like a Girls Gone Wild thing or something. Or maybe that was with Juice. I know he did like some sort of weird Girls Gone Wild type thing.
Yeah, my wife enjoyed it though. She watched it. She really enjoyed this. So she thought it was cool with the way that they did it without, any talking heads and stuff. She really enjoyed that.
Not that it's surprising that because I know usually you don't watch these things with your wife.
Mm-hmm.
Like usually you go watch them on your own because you like either do it at lunch during work or something like that, or she's taking care of the baby while you're watching it to prep for the show, like to prep for the podcast or whatever. So I know you watched a couple with your wife, and she might not have liked some of the movies or whatever. But I'm surprised you watched it. I'm glad she liked it, though.
Well, yeah, I was downstairs. Like I said, the basketball game was over, so I was like, I have to watch this thing. It's a sports documentary, and
It's
she's
only an
already
hour
down
long.
there. Yeah, so she's like, all right, put it on, and she was really gripped by the OJ stuff, especially when they said that the chase audio was ruled inadmissible for some reason.
Yeah, I don't.
We tried to look up why that one would have been inadmissible, but I couldn't find.
I was gonna say, did you see why? Because I didn't look it up, but I forgot about that too until I just watched it before we recorded, and I saw that, and I was like,
I mean, I feel like his lawyers could have gotten out of that anyway, just being like, look, he was going to kill himself because he missed Nicole, and he didn't do it, but he was running home to end it because the cops were after him, and like nothing in this tape should be like he doesn't like ever say
he doesn't
killed
admit
her
to
on the
anything.
tape.
Yeah.
So I mean, like I it wouldn't have helped their case that much. But I was just really interesting that it was ruled inadmissible. Maybe because a lot of people heard it. I mean, it wasn't online at that time, right? So I don't know.
During the trial, it's literally like the birth of the internet. Like it was.
Yeah.
I might have got my Hotmail account my senior year of high school. Like, so this is really when like email is starting and stuff like that. So, and yeah, there's so many things. I just added the OJ Made in America documentary in my cart on Amazon too. Because I have the Made in the People versus OJ Simpson, the series FX did. I have it on disc, but I still gotta get around to watching that. Played Al Cowlings in that?
No, who did?
Malcolm Jamal Warner.
Oh, really?
Theo himself.
That's interesting.
I'm binging Community again, and I just remembered I get to see him here like in a little bit in a few episodes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he even made a little Cosby crack in there.
All right, I guess I should decide. I've been stewing over this the whole time. What I'm gonna give you next year. I was seeing if there's any way I can tie it into anything we've talked about today, but I think I'm going to go with we're going to stay in LA, all right, and we're going to watch LA Confidential on Hulu.
I've been wanting to watch this, and I just never got around to it.
Yeah, Kevin Spacey, Guy Pearce, Russell Crowe, Kim Basinger, Danny DeVito, a lot of big names in this. Really funny though that we're sticking with Spacey after I just picked him for Horrible Bosses too. So after all of his issues, so he's gonna already jump up to being used twice in this.
Look,
podcast.
I mean, like I said, like I brought up then, with some of these people, it's a case of loving the art, hating the artist.
Right? Yeah. I know. I was a big Spacey fan until all that stuff came out. So we're gonna go Hulu. It's on Hulu. That you can watch LA Confidential. All right, stats. I don't really have any for this except for the one I was teasing, offline of what we're going to do for the finale. So I'll keep tracking some of that. But, this is like, do I include OJ as an actor? I don't like it's just footage, right? So I don't think we're adding much to this.
That and you've seen all the Naked Gun movies, right? So I don't think
I've seen the first one. I've seen the first. I think I've only seen the first one, but he's in it.
But that's what I'm saying. Like I don't think the Naked Gun movies are going to end up on the list. So, I can't imagine like
he's going to pop up again. Yeah.
Or Arnold Palmer is going to pop up. Or Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon. I can't imagine Mark Messier is going to pop up in anything. So
no. So I think we're safe to not add any of these to the stats.
The only one that might is Bob Costas.
I was thinking that. Or like the director is really only directed these type of like documentaries. So and none of them I've seen. So I don't think it's going to be anything to really add here. So we'll watch LA Confidential for the next episode. and then we'll be winding down our season. I think that leads you to have your wild card pick for after LA Confidential, and then
Yes.
the last episode will be my next pick after that. So then we'll take a little break and come back season 3, maybe even either add more wild cards or just figure around different ways to do the show each season. I think is fun. So we'll see how that goes. But thank you all for watching and listening along with us today. You can follow us on our social medias in the description. Leave a comment. Were you alive June 17th, 1994? Do you remember this? Was OJ ever a hero for you, or was he always in your lifespan known for this, tragic event? But yeah, so we'll wrap it up there. Thank you all for watching. We'll catch you next time.